The first thing I noticed wasn't the other man. It was the groceries, a photo on her fitness tracker app. Renata had checked in at a trail near Galax, Virginia at 6:42 in the morning on a Tuesday. But she'd told me she was at her sister's place in Memphis. Memphis is 600 miles in the opposite direction. And when I zoomed into the background of that tiny activity map, just a cluster of steps, just a blue dot on a road, something in my chest went quiet in a way I hadn't felt since my father died. Not grief, not anger, something colder. The kind of cold that tells you what you're about to find is already waiting. My name is Brennan Kowalski. I'm 47 years old. I've worked as a meteorologist at a regional aviation weather station outside Knoxville for 19 years. My job is reading patterns, pressure systems, wind shear, moisture columns. You learn, after long enough, that the sky never lies. It has no reason to. The data is what it is, and you either read it right or someone's flight goes sideways. I brought that same discipline home. I tracked our budget in spreadsheets. I built a deck on the back of our split level with my own hands over 3 summers. I coached Nora's soccer team on Saturday mornings even when I'd worked a double shift the night before. I was not a perfect man, but I was a present one. That I was certain of. Renata and I had been married for 11 years. We met in Knoxville at a mutual friend's cookout. She was finishing her master's in communications, laughing too loud at something by the fence, and I thought, I'd like to be the thing she laughs at. We built slowly. The split level came 4 years in. Nora came 2 years after that. Life got less romantic and more structural, the way it does. And I thought we were both fine with that. I thought we had an understanding. 2 people building something real, choosing it daily, even when the choosing wasn't exciting. I thought wrong. It started the way most things like this start. Small, and then, all at once. Renata had always been close with her younger sister Petra, who lived in Memphis. Weekend trips were normal, a long weekend here, a girls' trip there. I never questioned them. Why would I? She came back tanned or tired or carrying a wine recommendation, and life continued. But around 18 months before everything fell apart, the trips started getting longer. 4 days became a week. A week became 10 days. She always had a reason. Petra was going through something. Petra was having trouble at work. Petra had broken up with another boyfriend and needed support. I feel like Petra needs me more than you do right now, she said one evening, not unkindly, almost like she was complimenting me. I need you too, I said. She smiled. Not a warm smile, the kind of smile that closes a door. You're solid, Brennan. Petra isn't. I should have pressed on that. I didn't. The first real flag came about 8 months in. I was doing laundry on a Sunday. Renata was supposedly in Memphis again, and I found a parking receipt in the pocket of her gray fleece. A garage in Asheville, North Carolina, dated the previous Friday. Asheville is 4 hours from Memphis. I stood in the laundry room holding that slip of paper for probably 2 minutes. Then I put it in my shirt pocket, finished the laundry, and said nothing. I told myself there was an explanation. The second flag came from Nora. We were eating dinner, just the 2 of us, chicken and rice I'd made from a recipe her mother used to make, and Nora pushed her food around and said, without looking up, Dad, does Mom like camping now? I set my fork down. What do you mean? She told Grandma she's been hiking a lot, but she doesn't like hiking. She told me hiking is for people who hate comfort. I looked at my daughter's face, 8 years old, frowning at her rice, unbothered by the weight of what she'd just said. When did she say that to Grandma? I don't know. I heard them on the phone. I finished dinner, cleaned the dishes, read Nora her chapter, and waited until she was asleep. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the shared fitness account. Renata had given me access 2 years earlier when she started running and wanted to track her steps. She'd forgotten it existed, I think. Or she'd forgotten I had the same login. And there it was. Not Memphis. Not hiking trails near her sister's apartment complex. Consistent check-ins near Galax, Virginia. And one more detail I hadn't noticed before. A location tagged as a favorite in her app. Saved 6 months ago. An address I didn't recognize. I copied it. I wrote it on a Post-it note and put it in my wallet. I closed the laptop. I sat in the dark kitchen and listened to the refrigerator hum. That night I didn't sleep. But what I found next changed everything. I typed the address into a property search the following morning from my work terminal during a break. A single-family home outside Galax. Owner of record, a man named Dariush Meeks. I ran the name through a few public records. He was 44. Listed occupation, regional sales manager. No criminal record, nothing unusual. Just a name attached to an address attached to a location my wife had saved as a favorite on an app she forgot we shared. I sat with this for a week. I'm not a man who moves fast. Weather taught me that. A pressure system that looks catastrophic on Monday can dissipate by Thursday if you read the upstream data. But a system that looks mild on Monday and has the right moisture and shear behind it can drop a tornado on Wednesday with almost no warning. The question isn't how dramatic it looks. The question is, what's feeding it? I called Phil. Phil Okafor and I have been friends since we both worked at the same radar station in our 20s. He's a structural engineer now in Chattanooga, and he has the particular gift of listening completely before he says a single word. I drove to meet him on a Saturday, told him everything over coffee, and watched him process it the way he processes everything, without expression, until he's ready. You have a saved address, inconsistent check-ins, and a parking receipt from the wrong city, he said. That's what I have. You don't have proof of anything yet. No. He turned his cup. You also haven't confronted her. Not yet. Why not? I stared at the table. Because if I'm wrong, I can't take it back. And because if I'm right, I don't want her to know what I know yet. I want to know how deep this goes before she has a chance to manage my reaction. Phil nodded slowly. Then you need a lawyer before you need a confrontation. I'd been thinking the same thing. But hearing it from someone else made it feel like a decision instead of a fear. That same week, I noticed something in our banking that I hadn't paid attention to before because I'd been looking for the wrong thing. I wasn't looking for a big transaction. I was looking for a pattern. And there it was. A checking account in Renata's name only at a different bank, receiving transfers of between $400 and $600 every month for 26 months. Regular, quiet, from a freelance income she'd mentioned once and never mentioned again. 26 months. She'd started that account 8 months before the long Memphis trips began. She hadn't stumbled into this. She had built a runway. She wasn't just cheating. She had been preparing to leave. And she wanted to do it on her own schedule, with her own money, while I kept the lights on. I took a photograph of the statement. I put it with the post-it note. I kept going to work. I kept making dinner. I kept coaching Saturday soccer. I kept being the structure she was quietly stepping away from. And every night, Renata called from wherever she actually was and asked how Nora's day had been. And I told her, and she said goodnight. And I said goodnight. And I stared at the ceiling of our split level and thought about pressure systems. She called on a Thursday night around 9. I was on the back deck, the one I'd built with my own hands, looking at the tree line. "How's Petra?" I asked. "Better," she said. "She's really stabilizing." "Good." Pause. Then, "You sound different. Long week at the station. Is Nora okay?" "She's great. She made a card for you today. Drew a picture of a dog we don't have." Renata laughed, genuine, easy, the laugh of someone who didn't know the conversation had already ended 3 weeks ago. "Tell her I'll be home soon," she said. "I will?" I hung up. I set the phone on the railing and looked at the dark tree line and thought about how a system can look completely stable from the ground while the upper atmosphere is already in full rotation. I called Warren Holt the next morning. Warren was a family attorney in Knoxville that a colleague had used during his own divorce 4 years earlier. Quiet man. Deliberate. The kind who keeps a yellow legal pad and actually uses it. I sat across from him and laid out what I had. The fitness tracker, the address, the parking receipt, the shadow bank account. He looked at each item without touching anything. Then he leaned back. "She's been building a financial exit for over 2 years," he said. That's how I read it. "Do you have any evidence of the relationship itself? Communication? Photographs? Witnesses?" "Not yet." "Then here's what we do." He picked up his pen. "We move carefully. You don't tip your hand. You continue normal life. In the meantime, we begin documenting your role as the primary caregiver for your daughter. School records, medical appointments, sports schedules, everything that puts you in that chair. And we retain a forensic accountant to trace those transfers. And the confrontation?" He looked at me. "When we're ready, not before." I spent the next 6 weeks living 2 realities simultaneously. In the first one, I was Brennan Kowalski, Steady and present, coaching soccer on Saturdays and packing Nora's lunch and answering Renata's nightly calls. In the second one, I was building a case file with the methodical focus I bring to reading weather systems. I documented everything. Every absence. Every short call. Every time Nora asked when Mom was coming home, and I gave an answer that wasn't a lie, but wasn't the truth either. My mother, Carol, came to stay for 2 weeks without being asked. She showed up on a Sunday with a casserole and a look that said she'd already done her own reading of the sky. "You don't have to tell me anything," she said. "Okay," I said. "I'm just going to be here." She put the casserole in the oven. "You take care of whatever needs taking care of. Nora is mine." That sentence kept me steady for 6 weeks. Warren called on a Wednesday morning with news I hadn't anticipated. The forensic accountant had done a deeper trace. The freelance income Renata had been skimming into her private account. It was real. She did occasional communications consulting. But the account had been opened with a first deposit of $3,000 that didn't come from any freelance source. It came from a wire transfer originating in an account registered to Darius Meeks. He had been funding her exit, or at least contributing to it. This had been a coordinated plan between two people who had been together long enough to start moving money. "This changes the asset conversation considerably," Warren said. "How?" "Because now we have evidence of financial concealment, not just infidelity. In Tennessee, that matters in equitable distribution. She didn't just step out emotionally. She redirected marital assets." I stood in the parking lot of the weather station and stared at the radio tower until my eyes blurred. All those nights she called and asked about Nora. All those patient, practiced goodnight calls. She wasn't maintaining the marriage, she was maintaining her cover while the runway was being built beneath her. "What do we do now?" I asked. "I freeze the joint accounts. I file. And then, if you want to have a conversation with her before the papers are served, you have a narrow window." I thought about it for one day. Then I decided I didn't want a conversation. I wanted a reckoning. And I wanted her to have it without warning, the way I'd had mine, with nowhere to retreat to, and nothing prepared. Warren filed on a Friday. The accounts were frozen that afternoon. That evening, Renata called. I answered. "Hey," she said. "I was thinking I'd come back next weekend. Spend some real time with Nora." "That sounds fine," I said. Pause. "You're being weird again." "Am I?" "Brennan." Her voice shifted. "Careful. Is there something you want to say?" "Not tonight," I told her. "Get some sleep." I hung up, and I thought, tomorrow. She arrived on Saturday afternoon in a car I didn't recognize. A rental. She parked in our driveway like she still lived here and got out with her weekend bag and a smile that was working too hard. Nora ran to her from the front porch, and Renata hugged her, and I watched from the doorway, and felt nothing but clarity. I'd asked Phil to come, and I'd asked Warren to be reachable. Renata came inside with Nora attached to her hip and didn't look at me directly for the first 30 seconds. Then she did, and I watched her read something in my face that she hadn't prepared for. "Where'd you get the rental?" I said. She set her bag down. "Mine's in the shop." "In Memphis?" A beat. Almost nothing. "Yes. Renata." I said her name once, flat, no anger in it. "I need you to sit down." Nora was already in the kitchen looking for a snack. Renata sat on the edge of the couch. I sat across from her in the armchair I'd recovered last winter. Between us on the coffee table I placed 3 things. A printed page from the fitness tracker, the parking receipt from Asheville, and the bank statement with the shadow account highlighted. She looked at the table. She didn't touch anything. "Galax, Virginia," I said. "That's not Memphis." Her jaw moved. No sound. "The account at First Horizon, 26 months of transfers, the first deposit came from Darius Meeks." I paused. "That's his name, right?" She closed her eyes. "Don't," I said. Not loud, just final. "Don't perform this. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to make a scene in front of Nora. But I need you to understand that the conversation where you manage my reaction isn't happening." That window closed. She opened her eyes. They were wet. "How long?" I asked. Silence. "How long, Renata?" 2.5 years. Her voice was almost inaudible. 2.5 years. Nora had been 6 when it started. I'd been coaching soccer, building weather models, fixing the gutters, making chicken and rice on Sunday nights. 2.5 years. "Were you going to tell me?" I asked. "I was going to." She stopped. started again. I was trying to figure out how. By building a bank account he was funding. She flinched. That's not what that was. Then explain what it was. She didn't. I leaned forward. Here's what I know. You've been lying about your location for at least a year. You redirected money. You maintained a second life in another state. And you have been calling our daughter every night as if you were just at your sister's, as if everything was normal, as if I wasn't the one who has been here every single day making sure she felt stable. Renata's jaw tightened. You make it sound like you were perfect. I wasn't, but I was here. I let that land. Here is where she needed someone. Every morning, every soccer game, every nightmare at 2 a.m. Here. She looked away. Her chin trembled, and I recognized the shift. She was moving from guilt to grievance, looking for something to defend against. You were never emotionally available, she said. You were present, but you were always somewhere else in your head. I'd expected that. Warren had told me to expect exactly that. The rerouting, the architectural restructuring of the past to justify the present. Renata, I kept my voice level. If you had a real problem with our marriage, I needed to hear that from you. Not from a bank statement. She wiped her eye with the back of her hand. It's more complicated than... I know it's complicated. Life is complicated. You chose not to complicate it honestly. We sat in silence for a moment. From the kitchen I could hear Nora humming something to herself. Warren filed the divorce papers on Friday, I said. The joint accounts are frozen. You'll be served formally this week. I'm requesting primary custody. Given the documented absences, the financial concealment, and the overall record of who was here, Warren believes the court will agree. She went pale. You're not going to take my daughter from me. I'm going to let the court decide based on the evidence of who raised her for the last 18 months. I stood. You can stay tonight for Nora's sake. She's missed you. But this is the last conversation we have without attorneys in the room. She stood too, quickly. Brennan, I'm not angry, I told her. And I meant it. I want you to know that. I'm not going to destroy you. But I'm also not going to pretend that what you built over there didn't require the complete dismantling of what we built here. Those two things can't coexist. One of them has to be real. I walked to the back door, stepped onto the deck I'd built with my own hands, and stood in the October air. While inside the house I could hear my daughter asking her mother if she wanted to see the drawing she'd made. I stayed outside until I heard Nora laugh. Then I came back in. The months that followed were what Warren had predicted, methodical, exhausting, and ultimately clear. Renata's attorneys tried several angles. The emotionally unavailable husband, the rigid, work-obsessed provider. They painted a version of me that was technically present but spiritually absent. It's a useful strategy because it's hard to disprove an atmosphere. But what you can prove is a record. And the record was what it was. School pickup logs. Me, 94% of the time. Medical appointments. Me. Everyone for 18 months. Soccer attendance. Me. Every Saturday. Emergency contact called. Me. Teacher communication. Me. Nora's own testimony, collected through a child advocate, confirmed what the paperwork already showed. Her father had been her constant. Her mother had been a voice on a phone. The shadow account was the turning point in asset division. Tennessee courts take financial concealment seriously, especially when a third party was involved in funding it. The forensic accountant's report documented 31 transfers over 26 months, totaling just over $14,000. Combined with Renata's use of marital income to cover personal expenses during her extended absences, the equitable distribution shifted considerably in my direction. Dariusz Meeks, for his part, discovered there were professional consequences he hadn't anticipated. He worked as a regional manager for a supply chain company whose corporate ethics policy included a clause about conduct affecting the company's reputation. An anonymous, documented summary of the financial arrangements reached his HR department 3 weeks after our divorce was filed. I'll leave the outcome of that to your imagination. I don't celebrate other people's professional destruction. But I'm not going to pretend I didn't know it was coming. The final hearing was on a Thursday in March. Renata was there. Her attorney was good. Mine was better prepared. The judge reviewed the evidence for a long time before speaking. Primary residential custody. Brennan Kowalski. Renata granted scheduled parenting time with conditions. Asset division reflecting the documented concealment. No spousal support given the financial circumstances. Renata walked out of the courthouse without looking at me. Her attorney told Warren she might appeal. She didn't. 6 months later, Nora and I had settled into a different life in the same house. We'd rearranged the living room. I'd built her a reading nook in the corner of her bedroom over a long weekend. She had a fish named Gerald and a best friend at school named Priya and a new thing she liked to do on Sunday mornings, which was sit on the back deck and read while I made breakfast, both of us quiet, the Knoxville hills going orange in the early light. One morning she came in while I was scrambling eggs and slid a piece of paper onto the counter. It was a drawing. 2 people, roughly human-shaped, standing outside a house with a comically large sun, a dog in the yard, a fishbowl in the window. "Who's this?" I asked, pointing at the taller shape. "You," she said like it was obvious. "And this one?" "Me." She pointed to the fishbowl. "And Gerald." "Good likeness," I said. She hopped up onto the stool and pulled the drawing back toward her. "I think we should get the dog," she said. "For real this time." I turned back to the eggs. "We'll talk about it." "Dad, we'll genuinely talk about it." She smiled at the drawing. I looked at her for a moment. This specific 8-year-old in her specific Saturday sweatshirt, unbothered, drawing dogs into existence. And I thought about everything that had been required to arrive at this particular morning. Not the anger, not the paperwork, not the frozen accounts or the courthouse or the attorney's fees. Just the decision, made quietly and alone on a Tuesday morning in a parking lot, to stop waiting for the truth to announce itself and go read the data instead. I'd spent 19 years reading the atmosphere, telling pilots what was coming so they could make decisions with full information. There's no drama in that. It's just accuracy. It's just respect for what's real. Renata had needed me not to look too closely. She'd counted on the same reliability that made me good at my job to make me easy to manage at home. Patient, stable, slow to alarm. She wasn't wrong about any of those things. She was only wrong about what they'd cost her. Men who build things quietly often lose them quietly too. Not because they're weak, because they trust that what they've built means something to the other person the way it means something to them. That trust is the risk. And sometimes the risk doesn't pay. But the answer isn't to stop building. The answer is to know what you've built well enough to recognize when someone is quietly dismantling it behind you. Nora set her drawing on the refrigerator door with a magnet shaped like a pineapple. "Breakfast ready?" she asked. 2 minutes, I said. She went back to the deck. I looked at the drawing on the refrigerator. 2 shapes, a house, a fish, a dog that didn't exist yet. Simple, complete. Nothing missing, nothing hidden, nothing pretending to be something it wasn't. That's the version I was living in now. If you've made it this far, write the word clear in the comments and tell me, would you have confronted her the moment you saw that address? Or would you have done what I did and built the case first? Drop your answer below. Coming up next, he found her messages the night before their 10th anniversary dinner. He didn't cancel the reservation. He used it. That story is next, and you will not see the ending coming.